To my dearest friends, I am delighted to once again welcome you all to today's sermon. Across the tremendous breadth of our galaxy, we will find innumerable regions so hostile that it seems as though no species will ever be able to bring them to heel. The infernal expanse of the Eye of Terror, engulfed by the warp itself, is ruled over by the very gods of chaos themselves, with their demonic watchdogs ever prowling this wretched cyclone of suffering. Within the ancient labyrinth of the webway, taking a single wrong turn may lead you to the fallen city of Comora, where the Drukhari will lavish in your capture, bringing all manner of impossible tools of anguish upon your corporeal form. With that being said, we do not need to leave our own plane of reality to find realms which are as dark as this. Looking far into the northeastern fringe of our galaxy, beyond the final borders of Segmentum Ultima, we will find the horrors of the Ghoul Stars. This is a zone where there can exist no hope nor faith for a peaceful existence, as it is perhaps the most desolate sector of the galaxy, inhabited only by the outcasted nightmarish dregs of primordial alien species, who will not hesitate to defend their isolated stars by any means necessary. But somehow, even within these lonesome systems, mankind has treaded forth, laying claim to this forsaken sector, caring not for the dangers, as any star within the endless cosmos exists purely to be conquered, as it is our galactic birthright. Building a life for oneself around these miserable stars is nothing short of unthinkable. Not only is this region somewhat isolated from the wider galaxy, but as I have stated, it is inhabited by alien beasts most foul, who have not taken so kindly to the intrusive colonial efforts of these wayward Imperials. Mankind, however, has never been expected to simply roll over in feeble resignation. To safeguard the dauntless human worlds within the Ghoul Stars, a chapter of the fabled Space Marines were created, with the sole intention of patrolling the desolate sector, defending the weak, downtrodden settlers from the myriad of horrors to stalk through the void. These angels are known as the Death Spectres, and they shall be our topic for today. We will first go over the details of their chapter, ranging from their founding all the way up to the present-day 41st millennium, to learn of how they have carved out an existence around these stars. During this process, I shall go over the dark secrets of their chapter, revealing their tactics, recruitment process, gene seed quirks, and of the curious artifacts to be found within their fortress monastery. Finally, we will explore the dark rumors which persist around this chapter, and of their infamous reputation to the humans who reside within this Emperor-forsaken region, who truly believe that these angels of death are just as bad, if not worse to them, than of the alien beasts who they claim to combat. But this shall all come to light soon enough. My friends, our travels shall now take us past the silvery light of the Astronomicon into a shrouded region, where we will find naught but misery and death. So please steel yourselves as we delve into the darkness of the Ghoul Stars, to learn of the Marines, of the Death Spectres. On this topic, it is somewhat difficult to know of where to begin. The story of the Death Spectres is so deeply intertwined with that of the Ghoul Stars that it would be impossible to learn of one without inevitably breaching into the subject of the other. But with that being said, let us begin in this twisting tale. First, to understand why this chapter was originally founded, we must appreciate the sheer horrors to be found out in the reaches of the Ghoul Stars. The vast territories of humanity stretching out through the galaxy as the unified banner of the Imperium of Man may have once been carried on the unstoppable wave of the Great Crusade. But as our ancestors soon discovered, there is in fact a hard border to our potential growth through the stars. Empires may be built in but a single lifetime, but they will rapidly collapse if the Lords cannot maintain consistent supply lines to their most distant territories, and in the far future, this is ultimately defined by the reach of the Astronomicon. Imperial ships cannot reliably traverse the chaos of the warp if they have no clear view of the Emperor's silvery light, and so the farthest borders of Segmentum Ultima only exist because there is a true psychic darkness beyond their bounds. It will be here, in the endless night, that we will find the ghastly region of the Ghoul Stars. It is a cold, desolate zone, filled with cosmic nightmares so deadly that scholars will be driven to utter madness in their attempts at classifying the full breadth of terrors who lurk amidst their endless dark. Even when we consult the finest of Imperial cartographers, we still do not fully know of how vast this region truly is. From our limited perspective, it seems to stretch out for thousands of light years, but we may never be able to draw out a distinct border, particularly in the darker zones, which lie far outside of Segmentum Ultima. It may very well extend out into the nearby galactic void, where rogue planets silently glide, inhabited by exotic beasts who will never be observed by human eyes. But in this region, untold worlds of death will orbit in lonesome isolation, illuminated only by the faint baleful glow of their parental star. Impossible terrors will lurk here in their own nightmarish niche, where they may grow unchecked and unbound, preying upon each other as vicious predators in this abyssal void. Dreadful aliens have prowled about the cold light of these forlorn stars since the primordial, formative days of the Milky Way, and we can be sure that they will certainly outlast humanity, surviving long after the final vestiges of mankind have ultimately died in some apocalyptic cataclysm. They have erected their own empires, stretching across not only our own plane of reality, but even to the point where they may pervade into impossible realms, separated from even the swirling tempest of the warp. A remarkable species known as the Thexians have formed their own highly influential realm within the Ghoul Stars, being based out of the oxidized worlds named as the Blood Moons. We know very little about their nature, other than that they are a biomorphic race, which seems to have infiltrated and pervaded the lesser civilizations who surround them, likely so as to manipulate their populations into somehow serving the enigmatic wishes of their new, twisted masters. The Crave, meanwhile, are aliens who are rumored to predate the founding of even the ancient Eldari Empire, with some hushed whispers suggesting that they may have existed long before our own galaxy first took shape. They exist between the borders of the warp and of reality itself, feasting upon the minds of the poor victims who fall prey to their approach. Though the crusading fleets of the Emperor pushed their species back, they have since found purchase within the void of the Ghoul Stars, which they now seem to use as a staging ground, as they slowly encroach back into Imperial space, hoping to reclaim the galaxy and reform their primordial empire. Even the cybernetic legions of the Necrons have carved out their own territory within this anomalous zone. But it does not exist in the same way as would a conventional dynasty. The Bone Kingdom of Drazak is to be found within the Ghoul Stars, inhabited only by the ravenous beasts known as Flayed Ones, who venture out during their time of bounty to abduct vast stocks of mortal victims, only so that they may feast, and devour their hot, fleshy remains. Perhaps one of the more well-known of alien empires within this region would be that of the Scythor Fiends, but we will soon investigate their kind in more detail, as their story is innately tied to that of the Death Spectres. We could speak endlessly on the various xeno-horrors who dwell within the darkness of the Ghoul Stars, but as a common trope, none of them have taken kindly to the intrusion of humans within their territories. The colonies of mankind are under constant siege from these stellar nightmares, who descend during the night to eviscerate and wipe out entire planetary populations before silently slipping back into the void, never to be seen again. Such is the danger to be found here that many human colonies have decided to abandon the pathetic support of the Imperium, choosing instead to form their own independent empires, seeking self-preservation at the cost of all else. The largest of these is headed by the renegade Marine chapter of the Ashen Claws, who have constructed a fortified realm servile to neither the Imperium nor to chaos, and they have managed to sustain this autonomous state since their past exile during the days of the Horus Heresy. Aside from the myriad of alien and renegade threats, the vast majority of the Ghoul Stars exists as an unexplored wilderness. Thousands of rogue traders have been lost during their expeditions here, their signals falling silent forevermore as soon as they emerged from warp travel within its borders. I do not believe we will ever catalogue the full range of species to exist in this seemingly endless expanse. And each day we would likely be able to discover new, mind-boggling horrors who swim within its void. Yet, even here, the Imperium has provided grace. The desperate humans who reside amidst the Ghoul Stars are not to fight their battles alone, as the Astartes of the Death Spectres have been stationed here to defend them. But, as we will soon discover, perhaps the armies of these angels exists as a double-edged sword, and maybe the colonies of man would indeed be safer if these infamous Marines were never brought into existence. When the emergent threats of the galaxy ramp up in their aggression towards humanity, it is not unheard of for the High Lords of the Imperium to ordain for the creation of new chapters of the Space Marines during an event known as a founding. During this process, they will have a specific purpose in mind for the new chapter, be it to contribute to a newly announced crusade, to counter a distinct threat, or to simply replace other chapters which may have been destroyed or banished due to accusations of treachery. Typically, the creation of new chapters is one which is highly regulated, and the Imperium will hold vast records for its new angels. But for unknown reasons, during the 13th founding, which took place at some point during the 36th millennium, many of these secrets were seemingly lost. As such, we do not know of exactly how many chapters were formed, nor of their intended purpose, but we do know that during this event that the Death Spectres finally came into being. We may speculate that the final impetus to form the chapter who would remain stationed within the Ghoul Stars was due to an emergence of a mysterious plague known as the Pale Wasting. It racked the region in such an apocalyptic manner that 11 other Space Marine chapters had been completely wiped out from its spread. With that being said, the Death Spectres were not intended to be more resilient in any way, but instead they would be able to provide a preliminary defense to any newly discovered threats, which would be sure to turn their gaze upon humanity in the near future. All chapters are said to provide a small tithe of their gene seed back to Holy Terror, partially to ensure that they remain pure and uncorrupted, but also to build up a stock which may be utilized in the formation of a new chapter. In order to preserve some sense of unity, new chapters will be formed from a single progenital stock, and in the case of the Death Spectres, they were derived from their parental legion of the Raven Guard. Their gene seed, though truly sourced, is in no way pure. It will not cause the development of the Becher's glands, meaning that the Marines will not be able to spit out small quantities of venom. Similarly, the mucranoid organ will be absent, making them slightly less resistant to extreme fluctuations in temperature. Most strikingly, however, their melochromic organ is dysfunctional, causing their skin to express a pallid, ghostly appearance, and with eyes of blood red. It is said that many will lose their hair during their maturation process, but thus far we have encountered several Death Spectres who still possess a rather full, albeit ragged mane, and so we cannot verify these claims of hair loss. But as a result of these aberrations, the Death Spectres will appear as albinos, which when expressed upon an 8-foot-tall superhuman gives them a ghastly visage, which many Imperials have since come to dread. In any case, after their initial formation, the Chapter Master, a man by the name of Corcaidus, was ordered to take his Marines into the Ghoul Stars to protect the meek denizens of the wayward Imperial colonies and to purge the alien wherever they are to be found. During the long voyage through to this region, a most curious incident occurred within their master's mind. Corcaidus was said to have received a vision from the Emperor himself, which prompted him to redirect his fleet directly towards the world of Occludus. Since the days of the Great Crusade, it had been almost entirely abandoned by the Imperium, with only a small monitoring station still existing upon its surface, but it would soon be reclaimed as the new home world to these fated Marines. Whilst the rest of his chapter began in their efforts of forming a sprawling defensive encampment, Corcaidus descended into the dark, long-forgotten caves and tunnels to be found beneath the surface, desperately seeking out the secret which the Emperor had whispered to him. Moving deeper through the ancient labyrinthine caves, he finally discovered a vast domed structure named as the Temple of Voices. Here, he stood alone, many kilometers below ground, bearing witness to an alien structure, within which he found the treasure which he had long so sought. It was a throne of glass, known as the Shariax. None know of when it was first constructed, nor of the aliens who oversaw its build, but it now stood as a foundational relic to the Death Spectres, having been since claimed by Corcaidus as property to the chapter. It is said that once the Master first sat upon this throne, that he never left his position, remaining here until the final day of his death. This was to be a most hidden secret to their chapter, never being revealed to any save from the senior members of the Death Spectres, but it does serve a vital purpose to their continued operations. Rumors tell us that it provides some form of power to the incumbent individual, somehow enabling the chapter to better serve in its role as watchman over the Ghoul Stars, but this comes at a heavy price. The throne will slowly yet invariably drain the life essence of the enshrined Marine until they fall as a desiccated corpse, dying in cold isolation far beneath their home. As per chapter tradition, a new Astartes, typically their chief librarian, will then be ascended to act as the new chapter master, who in their culture is named as the Magir, and they will take up their position on the throne, remaining there until the Shariax inevitably saps the final dregs of life from their corporeal vessel. Only the senior members of the chapter, such as the first captain, high chaplain, or chief librarian, will be permitted to descend and commune with the entombed master, and from their word will the Megir still be able to lead and send out his orders to his fellow brother Marines. On this point, we should quickly cover the unique designatory system to be held by the Death Spectres. As stated, the chapter master will be known as the Megir, but he will also carry the title of First Spectre, Grand Master of the Order, Lord of Occludus, and the Eye that pierces the veil. We cannot truly say as to why this final title exists, or of the nature of the veil which he is said to gaze through, but regardless, these ancillary names are more ceremonial than anything else. The next most senior member of the chapter will be the Chief Librarian, who will be titled as the Messazar. Aside from the typical duties of a master to the Librarius, they will also serve to take up the role of Megir, once their predecessor inevitably expires upon the Shariaks. Aside from these, the honorary captain who holds the title as Master of the Flag will be known as the Megron. We do not know much of their position, but we may speculate that they will be ultimately responsible for watching over the chapter's sacred banner, and as an extension of this, perhaps the safekeeping of the rest of the chapter, relics will also fall as one of his duties. Though the Death Spectres do indeed follow in holding a high chaplain, thus far we are not certain as to whether or not they have been designated with a cultural title. This most senior group, consisting of the Megir, Messazar, High Chaplain, and potentially several other of the company captains, will be named as the Menrahir. With the Megir at their head, he will direct his orders from within the confines of his subterranean temple, which will then be interpreted by the fellows of the Menrahir and cascaded outwards to the rest of the Marines within this chapter. As a quick note, the curious names of these titles are said to come from Occludian Low Gothic, and so they are completely unique to this region of the cosmos. We do not know the full translation of this language, and thus far, one of the only terms we have deciphered would be for the Council of the Menrahir, which in our tongue translates to sage. Moving away from their ranks, let us return to their purpose within the Ghoul Stars. As I had previously stated, this chapter exists solely to protect the wayward humans who live within this lonesome region, by purging the myriad alien horrors who stalk them through the dark. They have carried out this constant vigil since first landing upon Occludus all those long millennia ago, and as a result of this, they have become incredibly adept at slaying foul Xenos in whatever disgusting form they present themselves as. Rather than being specialists at combating a well-known species, such as with the orcs or Tyranids, the members of the Death Spectres are far more suited to fighting the enemies who are completely unknown to the wider Imperium. Beasts who may simultaneously stalk through multiple planes of reality will spawn no sense of fear in these Marines, and they will wrench them from out of their otherworldly haunt to bring them true death in the name of the Emperor. Entities such as the Scyther Fiends are thought to live within their own distinct dimension, separate from the warp or from reality itself, but they have since been driven back further and further away from Imperial space, and we will soon discuss as to how the history of these monsters has intertwined itself with that of the Death Spectres. Cosmic terrors, slithering through from isolated pockets of time, will simply be banished and exterminated with the same impunity that the Astartes will bring to any alien who may dare threaten the sanctity of mankind. Because of their impressive and unmatched experience in combating rare Xenos threats, it is no wonder that the Death Spectres maintain a close connection with the specialized force of the Death Watch. Like with all chapters, it is not unheard of for Death Spectres Marines to be summoned to take up the long watch across the stars, but they will often adapt to their new Xenos hunting role far faster than of their fellow brothers, purely as a result of their past campaigns. With their skills in mind, it may seem as though the poor Imperial denizens of the Ghoul Stars are in safe hands, and that they need not fear the alien horrors of this region, but unfortunately, the moral compass of the Death Spectres is somewhat skewed. Whilst, yes, they do indeed patrol these wayward stars, but their campaigns are almost universally launched for their own benefit, and saving the lives of the humans here is merely a second thought. For you see, even though they are a chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, they receive very little in the way of support from the wider Imperium, primarily due to the fact that their realm exists outside of the range of the Astronomicon. Thus, they must fend for themselves, and each orchestrated action must be one which firstly protects the safety of their own chapter. As a result of this, calls for aid from Imperial worlds within this shrouded sector will be carefully considered by the Menrahir, and they will judge whether or not the planet may harbour resources which will benefit their intervention, or if it will simply risk the lives of the Astartes for nothing. It would be morally impossible for most to weigh the worth of one planet over another, but for the Ascended Marines, they are beyond human, and the lesser dregs of mankind are seen to be more of a pathetic annoyance, which often hinders their own actions. Thus, it is not uncommon for pleas for aid to go untended, condemning the entire world to death at the hands of beasts which existed long before the Milky Way ever coalesced into a stable galaxy. This would partially explain why so many Imperial settlements simply go dark within the Ghoul Stars, as even though they could intervene, the Death Spectres will instead choose to close their Vox channels, leaving the world to die in the abyss. If the chapter does indeed decide to descend, however, then this will not guarantee safety to the lost humans. If the Death Spectres order for a defensive operation to occur upon a world, then they will expect some form of recompense for their efforts, often being in the form of human recruits who will be stolen away, never to be seen again within their homes. Unsurprisingly, the Marines do not seem to care for the lives of those who they have come to save. Wounded humans will be left to die. Crowds who flock for aid will be forcibly dispersed. And if any are suspected of heresy, then they will be righteously purged, as the Astartes act as judge, jury, and emperor, sanctioned executioner. For example, during a campaign upon the imperial world of Sandran, the populace had sought aid from the Death Spectres after falling victim to the repeated raids of the reviled Necron-flayed ones. After dropping into battle, they purged many of the ravenous horrors, but then revealed the true purpose of their mission was to find new recruits to be admitted into their chapter. As such, they rounded up a select few of the hardiest individuals and, against their will, abducted them, before leaving the rest of the ruined colony to be devoured by the remaining flayed ones. Thus, we can see that even though they have been tasked with defending humanity and slaying the alien terrors, that they will seek self-preservation above all else. And they will care not for the fleeting vestiges of mankind, abandoning them in situations where they could have intervened as their salvation. This now brings us to a rather interesting yet sinister aspect of the Death Spectres, and it would relate to their recruitment and promotional rituals. To begin with, we must ask ourselves, if the worlds of the Ghoul Stars are so sparsely inhabited, then how can this chapter reliably gain new aspirant members to join in their ranks? In truth, Their methods for obtaining new recruits are most sickening, and it is one of the many reasons as to why the human settlements in this region have come to fear the approach of the angels of death. They will descend upon worlds, sometimes to quell an otherworldly horror, and sometimes simply to probe the populace, but during these visits they will inspect and interrogate the strongest of specimens, looking for capable individuals who will be designated as prime stock. The men will be taken away, shuttled back to their home world of Occludus, where the typical trials and ascension processes will begin, but for the women, there will be a far darker fate in store for them. There are several planets in close proximity to Occludus, which the Death Spectres have reformed into breeding worlds, and they will maintain a close vigil on the safety of their indentured servants. Here, the abducted souls will spend the rest of their days with the sole order of producing new offspring, and only the strongest and most genetically capable of children will be taken away back to join the chapter, with the rest simply being abandoned as wretched failures. Due to their propensity in stealing away forlorn humans, the wayward colonies of mankind are incredibly fearful of the approach of the Death Spectres, since they understand that if they are saved from the horrors of the aliens, that their treasured kin will still be taken away from them, and they will never see their kidnapped families again. For the destined children who are seen as holding the potential to join in the chapter, they will be tended to by adoptive serfs, and only once the child has grown to a suitable age, then the Astartes will begin in their process of transforming them into a space marine. But this, too, has been marred by a truly horrifying series of trials. It is said that in order to become a member of the Death Spectres, that you must die twice. I do not say this in any metaphorical sense, as the recruits will indeed feel their souls depart from their corporeal form, and it is only from the very few who can somehow return to their bodies that will be seen as being worthy of rising as a reborn Marine. The first death occurs around the age of 10. This will be before the recruit has received his first implantation of the sacred gene seed, yet he will have been prepared and warned by the senior members of the chapter as to how they may overcome death itself. After being administered with a potent toxin, the child will lie back and descend into what the chapter has coined as the Black River. This is a flowing realm beyond our own, inhabited by impossible entities who will tempt and try to steal away the lost soul of the child. Yet, this is just another danger to be curtailed by those who seek to join with the chapter. It will take all of their instinct and prior training to fight against its pull, but this is not a task which is to be seen as impossible. For those who are able to beat death and push through its raging currents, then they will forge a path back to their cold, empty bodies, where they will awaken as champions who outsmarted the impossible nether. Gasping for breath, they will emerge once more within the chambers of the chapter, having been ascended from mere recruit to a neophyte of the Death Spectres. Their death may last from but a few minutes, all the way up to several hours, and it only depends on one's constitution as to how long they remain submerged within the Black River. Many will sadly be lost during this process, never finding their way back to their bodies. And these rejects will simply be cast out as failures, unworthy of resting within the halls of this chapter. This entire process exists due to the ancient law of the chapter reading that only those who have died in battle may be reborn as warriors against the otherworldly forces which they must combat. Yet this has understandably been kept as a secret to the wider Imperium, since it is a practice most barbaric and undeniably cruel. The next death will occur later, during the final stages of gene seed maturation at around the age of 20. At this point, they will possess the new, specialized organs of the Marines, though they are far from true Astartes, and until they prove that they may once more beat death. Then they will still be considered as children. This time, the death will last far longer. The hours will drag on, melting into entire days as the aspirant drowns within the Black River once more, desperately fighting to swim through the nightmarish flow, to return to their bodies. It is said that this second death is far more treacherous than the first, almost as if the otherworldly entities know that this figure is a more prized warrior, and that his soul will be an ever more delectable thing to steal. Time is skewed when one dies, and so, from the perspective of the recruit lost to the Black River, they may believe that they have spent a seemingly endless time within its swell. But as with all things, even this nightmare will come to an end. Some will die, but others, the indomitable few, will emerge once more. And as they awaken, they will be greeted not as a neophyte, but as a reborn Marine, and as a true brother to the Death Spectres chapter. Legends say that for a select few of the Marines, that they will be forced to endure a third, ever darker death. This is only for the individuals who are chosen to rise as librarians, and only the most blessed and psychically strong of their kind will survive the process, this time awakening as a codicier to the chapter. The psychic Marines who descend once more into the Black River, though accustomed to its nature, will shine ever more brightly thanks to their emergent powers, and a new breed of otherworldly beasts will prey upon them from beneath the surface. Aspirant librarians, though dead in body, will still possess their vibrant minds, and they will be forced to do battle with the mysterious creatures, desperately fighting them off as they seek to return to life. The practice may seem foolish to some, as the Marines are willingly risking the deaths of their peerless brothers merely to honor an ancient tradition of their chapter, yet to the Death Spectres it is something which will bring them strength in their battles to come. They have been tasked with combating the many cosmic horrors of the Ghoul Stars, and so only those who have truly felt the embrace of death, yet survived its cold grips, may be considered as being worthy enough to carry their name, and to defeat the nightmares of this isolated realm. For the true battle brothers of the Death Spectres, if they are to fall in battle against an alien horror, then their bodies will be retrieved, and the sacred burial rites will begin. Curiously, they have been known to mummify their dead, with the preserved corpses being left in a great tomb beneath their fortress monastery, forever to rest as heroes who were ultimately claimed by a vile Xeno. We are not entirely sure as to why the Death Spectres choose to enact this process of mummification. Perhaps it is to simply preserve their fallen brothers, venerating them in death as a sign of respect. Alternatively, we could speculate that they believe that a final rebirth may indeed be possible, and that one day the departed soul will once again find their way back, arising to stand again as a revived battle brother. I previously alluded to a terrifying alien species known as the Scyther Fiends, and of their deep connection with the Death Spectres, and indeed, during their stay within the Ghoul Stars, the two have become rather familiar with one another. Make no mistake, however, for the Marines will ever attempt to purge them from this region of space. However, they have come to understand that this is a task which may ultimately prove to be futile. The Fiends, as I stated earlier, are aliens who have been known to the Imperium for many millennia. But thus far, most attempts at investigating their mysterious empire have been met with failure. Probes, scouting vessels, and rogue traders will enter their territories only to never return, almost as if they simply vanished within the void, leaving no trace that they ever once existed. To look upon a fiend is to see a truly horrifying entity. They are tall, lanky beasts who lope about, dragging their long clawed arms along the grounds, yet maintaining an eerie silence with nary a grunt coming from their ugly, elongated faces. In the dark, one may mistake them as a mutated humanoid, but this is a most deceiving appearance, as they are hardly to be considered as alive in the same way as you or I. If one was to approach, then you would quickly notice that their grey, glassy skin will harbour a curious, reflective quality to it, casting off an iridescence as light bounces off of its frame. Moving closer still, their eyes will fall into view, emitting an impossible light, freezing those who match its gaze in a paralytic state. It is suspected that these creatures may inhabit their own dimension, separate from the malignity of the warp and of the labyrinth of the webway, but we may only speculate as to the true nature of their shrouded realm. Even after discovering planets which were infested with the fiends, after the death spectres descended to purge them, they found the worlds to be utterly barren, with any traces of life having disappeared into the ether. With that being said, however, if any are indeed cornered, then they will be quick to defend themselves. Using their hitherto unknown crystalline technology, they will throw razor-sharp discs of a glass-like material which will shatter mid-flight, falling to the floor, as though someone had spilled a great bag of tiny diamonds. At this point, they will reform into larger crystals, darting about on the orders of the fiend, as if they were but an extension of the creature's own mind. Now that we understand the otherworldly nature of these aliens, it is no wonder that the Death Spectres had attempted to exterminate them. But then why is it that they failed in their campaign? As I stated before, they may simply vanish on but a moment's notice, and this is a phenomena which was similarly observed by the relentless forces of the Black Templars. The Ghoul Stars Crusade was launched at the behest of High Marshal Helbrecht, who led his fleets into the desolated corner of the galaxy with the intent of finally purging the alien menace from existence under the weight of Astartes' fire. Reluctantly, the Crusaders consulted with the Death Spectres on their objective, yet they were unsatisfied with the answers provided. It seemed as though the Watchers of the Ghoul Stars had resigned themselves to simply contain the fiends, as they saw the final task of extermination as being simply impossible. They were to fight an otherworldly foe who dwelled within a realm unknown to any within the Imperium, and so all they could do was to respond to any reported incursions of the fiends, even if they knew that their mission would end in failure. The High Marshal, disappointed with the lack of zeal in his distant cousins, continued with his crusade until their forces finally reached the suspected homeworld of the fiends, a gas giant by the name of Grave Core. Sending airborne expeditions down through the clouds, Helbrecht believed that he would find some form of stronghold to the crystalline manipulators. But instead, this world, like many others within the Fiend Empire, was simply empty. There was no life to be found, no grand army, and no fortress complexes to be seen. Thus, in anger, he ordered for his fleets to purge the world in flames, initiating a great orbital bombardment in the hopes that it would scour any hidden vestiges of fiend activity down into ash. But their bombs were ineffective. The fires could barely catch light, and yet this did not dissuade the righteous Templars. They continued in their bombardment, only relenting when the upper atmosphere finally succumbed to conflagration. But even this would prove itself to be a wasted effort. The veterans of the Death Spectres retorted to Helbrecht that their bombardment would not matter in the grand scheme of the Ghoul Stars, and that despite the world burning, that the Scyther fiends would once again return, slipping out of their parallel dimension to reclaim all that they had lost. The Astartes do not believe that they will ever be free from their scourge, and they do not foresee a future where the fiends have been exterminated. Thus, the two must coexist, pushing on one another in an eternal war with the entirety of the Ghoul Stars at stake. Yet, based on their prior campaigns, it now seems that the only faction who will ultimately survive this conflict will be of the Scythor fiends. The Death Spectres were created to safeguard humanity from the various horrors of the Ghoul Stars, but through the long years, they have seemingly abandoned their vital mission, resulting in them gaining a level of infamy to those who dwell within this forlorn sector. No human wishes to die at the hands of an alien, but upon seeing the falling drop pods of the Death Spectres, they may finally decide to meet the Emperor by their own hands, as they know that these Astartes are not carried upon the wings of salvation. The Marines only care for themselves, casting aside the tearful pleas of settlers, as they abduct stronger, more capable members of their community, only to shuttle them back to Occludus, where they will be forced to die twice beneath the nightmarish flow of the Black River. They will not hesitate to purge any world within the Ghoul Stars if it is bereft of resourceful aid for themselves. And since they are the only Astartes to patrol this region, they will be free to do as they wish, to whomever they desire. But even with these actions, it is undeniable that this chapter has proven itself as a formidable force against the Xenos' horrors. Without their constant vigil, it is highly likely that many unspeakable entities would have slinked out of the void, where they would be able to dive deeper into Imperial space, unnoticed by all until it was far too late. This all comes at a cost, however. For how many humans have died during their campaigns? How many were abandoned by their saviors so that their mission could be completed? We will never know of the true repercussions which have come about from their dereliction of duty. And if we were to ever see these statistics, I believe that they would be categorically horrifying. With all that I have said, however, can we truly say that the Death Spectres are evil? I do not believe that they are a fallen chapter, nor that they have completely violated the trust of the Imperial Lords, as instead their actions are only performed out of a matter of grim necessity. If their situation was not so dire, then perhaps they would be more willing to provide assistance to the meek citizens of their war-torn worlds. But in this wayward region, there is no hope, and no reinforcements are coming, so the Marines must forge their own path at the cost of all others. Even if we rationalize their behavior, we must wonder, how would the Inquisition and Lords of Terror react to the discovery of this chapter's secrets? Utilizing an alien artifact which saps the life of their chapter master, forcing their recruits to die twice as a chilling ritual, and willingly allowing imperial worlds to be claimed by alien horrors are all things which would be most frowned upon if they ever came to light. But they never will. None but desperate fools will ever dare to venture into the treacherous reaches of the Ghoul Stars, and so this sector, by all accounts, belongs to the Death Spectres, and whilst within their own empire they may do as they like. my dearest friends, we have now once again reached our end. As I close this chapter, I must thank you all for listening to this tale in its entirety, and I hope that the stories of the nightmarish Ghoul Stars and of the watchful guardians of the Death Spectres was entertaining and calming. For now, however, our time has come, and so I would wish each and every one of you a fond goodbye.